The ferry horn cut through the early morning fog like a wounded cry, and on its open deck, where the river met the sky in a trembling line of silver, a single moment waited quietly to change many lives. The CEO stood alone near the railing, dressed in an expensive coat that did nothing to warm the emptiness he carried inside, when a small presence beside him shifted the air. A young girl in a wheelchair, fragile yet luminous with curiosity, looked upward with eyes that had learned patience too early. In that instant, surrounded by strangers and moving water, the world slowed, and something unseen but powerful prepared to unfold. If you believe that kindness still exists in this fast, indifferent world, and that second chances can appear when we least expect them, please take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Your support keeps stories like this alive. The CEO, known across continents for ruthless decisions and billion-dollar deals, had boarded the ferry to escape the noise of his own life. Newspapers painted him as invincible, a man who built empires from nothing, but they never wrote about the quiet hotel rooms, the unanswered phone calls, or the memories he buried beneath endless work. The ferry ride was meant to be a short pause between meetings, a routine crossing over water he barely noticed anymore. Yet that morning, the river seemed alive, reflecting the pale sky like a promise he had forgotten how to make. The girl had been brought onto the deck by a volunteer group escorting children with disabilities on a day trip. Her wheelchair was old, the metal chipped, the wheels squeaking softly as if apologizing for existing. She was small for her age, her body shaped by a condition that had kept her seated since childhood, but her face carried a quiet strength. She tilted her head back, watching birds circle above the ferry, their wings cutting through the mist. For her, the sky was not just a view, it was a symbol of everything she could not reach. Life had taught her limitations early. Hospitals were more familiar than playgrounds, and windows often replaced open fields. Her world existed at waist level, where adults spoke over her and ceilings felt closer than horizons. Yet she never stopped imagining what it would feel like to see freely, without obstruction, without wheels anchoring her to the ground. The ferry deck, open and wide, offered a rare closeness to that dream, but even there, the railing blocked her view, reminding her of the distance between wanting and having. The CEO noticed her only because she was so still. In a crowd of movement, her stillness felt heavy. He glanced down, intending nothing more than a polite acknowledgement, but her gaze caught him off guard. There was no pity in her eyes, no demand. Just hope, raw and unguarded. Something in his chest tightened, an unfamiliar sensation he quickly tried to dismiss. He had learned long ago that emotions slowed progress, that empathy complicated success. Still, the river kept moving, and the moment refused to pass. He thought of his own childhood, of climbing rooftops in a crowded neighborhood, of staring at the sky and believing it belonged to him. That boy had promised himself he would never feel small again. Somewhere along the way, success had lifted him high but left him strangely confined. Standing there now, he realized that while his feet touched the deck, his soul had been seated for years, unable to rise. The girl's request did not come as words spoken aloud but as a presence, a silent plea that filled the space between them. She wanted to see beyond the metal bar, beyond the limits imposed on her body. She wanted the sky, not as a reflection, but as an open truth. The CEO hesitated, calculating risks as he always did. Cameras could appear, opinions could form. Yet for once, the calculations felt meaningless. When he reached down, his hands trembled slightly, surprising him. He asked permission with his eyes, and she answered with a nod so small it might have been missed. Carefully, respectfully, he lifted her, feeling the lightness of her body and the weight of responsibility settle into his arms. The river breeze brushed her face, and her breath caught as the railing disappeared from her view. From that height, the sky opened itself fully to her. Clouds stretched endlessly, painted in soft blues and whites, and sunlight broke through like a blessing. Her face transformed, eyes wide, lips parted in wonder. For a few seconds, the world held its breath. Passengers nearby fell silent, sensing something sacred unfolding without needing to understand it. The CEO felt it too. Holding her, he felt connected to something purer than profit or power. The sky she saw was the same one he had ignored for years, yet through her joy, it felt new. He realized how many times he had been lifted by others in his life, how many chances he had been given, and how rarely he had looked back to lift someone else. The ferry continued its journey, water parting beneath it, but inside him, something shifted direction. Memories surfaced of his late wife, who had once told him that success meant nothing if it did not make room for compassion. He had brushed off her words then, chasing numbers and recognition. Now, holding a child who asked for nothing more than a view, those words echoed painfully clear. When he gently placed her back into the wheelchair, she did not look disappointed. The sky had already imprinted itself inside her. She smiled, not the polite smile adults expected from children like her, but a deep, satisfied smile that said she had been seen. The CEO stepped back, suddenly aware of the crowd, of eyes glistening with unshed tears. For the first time, he did not care. The rest of the ferry ride passed differently. The CEO no longer checked his phone. He watched the river, the sky, the people. He noticed small things he had trained himself to ignore: an elderly couple holding hands, a mother adjusting her child's scarf, the volunteer kneeling to speak at the girl's eye level. Each moment felt like a quiet lesson. That day did not end with applause or headlines. There were no speeches, no announcements. The CEO disembarked like everyone else, but he carried something heavier than his briefcase. In the days that followed, he found himself returning to that moment repeatedly, unable to shake the feeling that his life had asked him a question on that ferry deck, and he had only just begun to answer. He visited hospitals he had only funded on paper, meeting children whose names were not statistics. He authorized changes that made buildings accessible, not because it looked good, but because he finally understood what barriers felt like. His board noticed a change, a softness they mistook for weakness. They did not know that strength had simply taken a new form.